Good evening. I'm Carrie Cronin, Assistant Library Director at York Public Library. Welcome to tonight's Youth Democracy panel, Teens on Politics and Activism, which is co-hosted by York Public Library, Scarborough Public Library, and Maine Students Vote. It is the first community event related to the upcoming Camden Conference series and will be recorded. Thank you to Allyson Gardner, Director of Maine Students Vote, who will moderate tonight's discussion, and to the students from York and Scarborough High Schools who will share their perspectives about issues important to teen voters in the upcoming election. Thanks also to our planning team comprised of Elsa Rowe of Scarborough Public Library, Allyson Gardner of Maine Students Vote, and Susan Carter and Viola Sheehan of the Camden Conference Committee.
Thank you, Carrie. Yes, I'm Dwight Blue. I'm an English teacher at Oceanside High School in Rockland, and I am the chair of the Education Committee for the Camden Conference, filling in for Susan Carter this evening, but very happy to be here. And again, thank you all for making this happen and for being here as well. A bit about us: the Camden Conference is a nonprofit, nonpartisan citizens forum driven almost exclusively by volunteers from our community. The mission of the Camden Conference is to foster informed discourse on world issues. In keeping with our mission, we offer a series of community events leading up to our annual weekend conference. These free events are intended to provide background on the yearly topic and to touch on areas related to the conference that may not be covered in its three-day format. This year's conference, our 38th, is Democracy Under Threat, a Global Perspective. It'll take place February 21st through the 23rd, live at the Camden Opera House and streamed to Rockland and Falmouth. For more information on our organization and the conference, please visit camdenconference.org. Thank you again.
Thanks, Dwight. Well, we're really excited to be here tonight. As Carrie mentioned, I'm Allyson Gardner. I run an organization called Maine Students Vote. We're part of the wider collaborative that is Democracy Maine. So some of you may be more familiar with the League of Women Voters of Maine or Maine Citizens for Clean Elections. Those are all organizations that are closely working in collaborative and part of the same coalition that I work for. Tonight, we're really excited to have a solid group of young people who have been very active in their communities and who are very passionate about change making, being involved, and being connected to both democracy, government, and the communities that they live in. We will have a couple of other students joining us as the evening goes on. You know, it's peak sports seasons and theaters kicking off, so there's lots of conflicting events this evening. So our group will grow and shrink as kind of different conflicts resolve and other people have to step out. But let me pass it to our youth panelists this evening to get started introducing themselves, and I'll start with Yashu.
Hi everyone, it's so nice to meet everyone. My name is Yeshu. I'm a senior from Scarborough High School, and I am a youth program poet laureate of Portland, Maine. And a little bit about myself. So I am in a lot of poetry spaces, and I do a lot of stuff with the other poet laureates, Portland poet laureates, Maya and Mimi. And in my school, I'm really passionate about, we do a lot of civil rights advocacy, reducing sexism and violence program, a lot of policy work. And for me, I think poetry and advocacy work, I like the intersectionality of it. And that's something that I'm really passionate about, is civic engagement through poetry and creative ways of expression. And so it's really nice to be here and be able to talk more about it tonight. Can't wait.
Thanks.
And I use her pronouns. I forgot.
Thanks, Yeshu. We're really glad that you're joining us this evening.
Yeah. Thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
Marin, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Marin. I'm a senior at York High School. I use she, her pronouns. And I'm really involved in a lot of political action groups within our school. I co-founded our Model UN organization for my school, and I've been working to inspire students at York to be involved in foreign politics. I'm really passionate about women's rights, climate action, and various other political issues. And I've always been involved in politics and been interested since a very young age. I've attended conferences since I was young about leadership and political action. And overall, I'm just excited to talk to everyone and share my thoughts and hear others' thoughts.
Thanks, Marin. And Alex, you want to wrap us up with introductions?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everybody. My name is Alex Wu. I use any pronouns. I'm a senior at Scarborough High School. I've been involved in co-founding the National Youth Council for the League of Women Voters. I've also done everything from election observation to canvassing for question 6. Last year, I got the opportunity to testify for national popular vote. So that passed in Maine, and that was pretty great. I've also done local policy with my school board, specifically with transgender student policy, and I've also worked with reducing sexism and violence with Maine Boys to Men.
Thanks, Alex. Well, I'm incredibly excited for this conversation that we're about to have. Just to give you audience members a preview, we have a couple of kind of pre-written questions that the panel will help the panelists give you more information about their work, but we will be taking questions at the end, and you're welcome to drop them into the chat so you don't forget them. Our first question for our panelists this evening is, what does democracy or change making mean to you? And Marin, we'll kick off with you this time.
So democracy and change making to me is more of like an action, and it's more of ways people should be involved, in ways people can explore their own individual powers. And it's just an opportunity for people to really do what they can to make the world into what they want. And I find it as like a power that we live in a society that's built on a democracy, and that individuals have that opportunity to make change in the world. And I just see both of it, and it means to me as opportunity to do as you see and to just make the world as you want and really take advantage of this opportunity, because there are a lot of places in this world where people don't have those freedoms. And so making the most out of your power and your status is what that means to me. And it's just an important factor of living in our society. And it's really just important to do what you can to make any change that you can to help better our society.
I'm going to leave it open to either Alex or Yashu. Either one of you want to step in and add to that?
Okay, I'll go. I think for me, democracy, change making, I think it's just realizing that we have the privilege to make change and just use this opportunity and seek opportunities to make change. And I think one of them is like civic engagement, like reaching out to people. And I think something that's often forgotten is intersectionality through different like perspectives and experiences, and kind of bringing all of these collective experiences together and creating change. I think that is something that's really important when you're trying to, strive for change. Like, you want people from different backgrounds and experiences to contribute to that and just use their power and experience for something that can really help change something. So intersectionality is definitely something that's really important. Yeah, I think that's what I think. I think especially for younger people who think that it's harder for us to be involved in a lot of these change making stuff because of barriers, I think it's important to recognize that we do have some power and we need to utilize that power.
I guess building off of that point, I think another thing that is often overlooked is local politics. I really like this question because it's so broad and in like depth at the same time. I feel like democracy in the US has so many different facets, but democracy is predicated on people being willing to engage. If people don't engage with politics or with change making, nothing ever happens. So I like to look at democracy through the lens of community. And I think we see that a lot with our local politicians and our state politicians, specifically in Maine, because we have such a volunteer-based legislature. Because Maine only allows for half-year legislatures, and a lot of local politics is by just your neighbors. I think we have the perfect building blocks to allow for change making and democracy, not in the politician sense, but in the caring about your community sense. And I think initiating and going to your local ballot places to work with community members, not just local politicians, to create change there can be really impactful. And I feel like that's where democracy really shines. In these small communities where we don't necessarily call it democracy, but everybody's voice is impacted in the change.
Alex, I feel like you have queued up our next question very, very perfectly in talking about community and some of the things that motivate you and are your passions. Our next question here is if each of you wants to dive a little bit more into your motivations and your drives for getting involved in politics and government. And I will start with you, Alex, since you set us up so well.
Oh, you put a little bit of a spotlight on me here. I, community. I think what really got me started in this was the League of Women Voters, to be quite frankly. There was an internship opportunity that I had the chance to engage with, and it was a paid internship. So it was 5 hours per week for $15. And I just got to do anything I was interested in as long as it was related to learning or engaging fellow students and just a ton of democracy work. So with that as broad as it is, I got to do a lot of different things. And I think what's really underlying all of this is that I am a nerd and I find all of this quite fascinating. I think the way that all of this policy works and engaging with community, learning about what everybody is passionate about and what they love, and listening and then changing things from there has really emboldened me in this process. So I would say what makes me excited about policy and politics and government is listening to what people want and seeing how you can create effective change.
Marion or Yashu, would you like to add to that about what's motivated you to get involved?
I can add off of that. I've been interested in government and politics since I learned what government and politics was at a very young age. And what has always made me so intrigued is that it was an opportunity to make change, because growing up you always have these big ideas of like how you think the world should be and like what you want to do, and I think politics I saw as like an avenue to do that. And so using whatever opportunities I can get through, whether it's through like national organizations, state organizations, local organizations, whatever opportunities I can get to either share my views or help others spread theirs, I think is what drives me. Because it's like in youth, like being a youth, you don't have as much power necessarily as like an adult, like especially us, most of us are under 18 and we can't vote and we haven't been able to vote. And so that's a big part of being active in politics. And so doing whatever else you can do to help like push forward your ideas and really just try and kickstart the change that you want to see in the world that then you can better accomplish as an adult, where you have more resources and more people willing to support you, is what I think drives me. And my interest in government politics is like the change that I can start now and the change that can come.
Thanks, Marion. Yashu, would you like to take a second?
Yes. So I think for me, honestly, it was my school civil rights club. At our civil rights club, we do so much like policy work, so many events and stuff. And I think there, being around other like-minded individuals and just learning more, getting myself more educated, because Scarborough, it's kind of hard to find resources on your own if you want to learn more. And it was just really nice to be in a space with other people like that. And I think that kind of pushed me to do more of this because of like my experiences in life too. Like I'm a first generation like immigrant too. And so there's a lot of barriers and a lot of other people who are in that position. Like some of my friends might feel like they can't get involved in those spaces because there's not a lot of power. But the thing is, there is so much power to your voice, and at least using it to spread some kind of change and stuff. And you should never like be scared of being involved in policy work and stuff like that. And I think really in the Civil Rights Club, seeing people who had similar experiences from me, different experiences, it was really nice to just learn and find my interests and kind of build off of that. And I think another thing that also motivated me was honestly Alex too, because Alex is like one of my closest friends. And Alex, I think even having someone who like pushes you to do stuff, because I think Alex has pushed me to do so many things, because I was one of those people who was scared. I was like, oh, I'm not involved in this space. Like I probably won't be let in, even if I just want to engage. But I think Alex taught me like, oh, you, it doesn't matter. Like everyone has a voice and everyone has the power to create change. And I think having someone that really pushes you as well is something that's so helpful. And just, I think finding that community and space is just so essential, to just find out what you want to do, what you want to make change, and just figure out everything that you are hoping for in the future for society as a whole.
As I listen to each of you talk here, I feel like there's a common theme here emerging of listening to others and collecting the information of what each person around you cares about, and then seeing how that can be led into action. And our next question here is about what you're hearing, right? Like, what are the topics and the subjects that you've seen motivating your peers and motivating the people around you? And Yashu, we'll pass to you to go first this time.
Okay, so I think a lot of my peers that I'm around, like Alex and like a lot of others, I see like a lot of government policy, legislative policy stuff, and I'm like really interested in that as well because it's just so cool. I think what Alex mentioned about like local government, I think that's so important because especially like your local government, you can create change. And recently we had like Shelley Pingree, Congresswoman Shelley Pingree, like come and to our school and just listen to our conversations. And so I think building upon those connections and stuff, with your local like legislators and representatives, and just like having that is so important. I think that's what our group and stuff we've been really like doing. We've been reaching out and stuff, and it's just really interesting to listen to different perspectives of different people and conveying that to different organizations and stuff. And I think that's been really motivating us, trying to get our attention, trying to find connections to, I guess, make our work more widespread. Just finding connections is very motivating because if you find connections, they can really help you push they can help push what you want to do. They can help you create change.
Alex or Marin, are either of you inspired to jump in next?
I have specifically to York High School. There are a lot of students that are very interested in politics, but we have a lot of organizations that are focused and geared towards specific parts of politics. Like we have a young women's leadership organization that helps spread awareness to women's rights issues within our community, within our state, and globally. We work to help educate our fellow peers who might not be as informed about women's issues or might not care to care and understand what women in their lives are going through. And that's a big issue that motivates a lot of people within our school. And we also have lots of other organizations that are focused on the environment and civil rights and all just very aspects of human rights in our society. And through those organizations, there's a big push to educate the students in our community so they can become educated voters. And there's a lot of work within our school. In some classes, what they do is they actually put together packs for kids to get pre-registered to vote. So everyone in York High School can easily become a voter and can be an active member in our society. And I think that idea of being able to vote and make your own decisions and have them mean something within the political scale for someone who might not actively want to be out pushing for legislation, but might just want to do what they can in their lives, which is voting. And that's something that motivates a lot of people and a lot of my peers in my community. And I see that across the state, I guess.
I think I might take a little bit of a different angle to this question because the policy part of my brain is seeing a potential danger in this. So to me, what this question seems like it's asking is, what do you think motivates the youth? Although it uses the word peers instead. I do a lot of youth engagement work, and I think knowing the audience and what the intent of this panel is and finding ways to engage the youth in your life, I think that the best way to find what youth are interested in is being willing to hold those conversations. I don't want anybody coming back from this panel to say, oh, I was on this panel and listening to these youth talk about youth and politics and what impassioned them, rather than listening to the youth in their lives, because youth are not a monolith. We are not a homogenous entity. And I think for people who are interested in engaging the youth in their lives, I'd say A, be persistent, and B, be very willing to listen and to acknowledge criticisms. Youth, as with everybody, have a lot of ideas and a lot of beliefs for change making. Specifically for getting people caught in the process, when you want to engage anybody, not just youth, you want to not bog them down with the process. So if saying, oh, if you want to create change, then you have to pre-register and you have to register and you have to vote. There are so many ways to create change, and there are so many different ideas that people have. By being willing to hold these conversations and genuinely being interested with what people are interested in, not just things that are typically seen at a voting place, then we can engage youth much more effectively. If there's people that are interested or in democracy, but they don't want to engage with the vote, a lot of people, specifically youth, have been disillusioned by our democratic system. They believe their vote does not matter. They believe they cannot create a change. I'd say my personal route is to go for local and state politics, where they are people you know, they're people you're comfortable with, and you know that they care about your voice. At the national side, that might be true, but we can show people that we care, that we're willing to listen, and we're willing to change ourselves to enable other youth to change what they want to change. So showing that change comes from within and then outward.
I really appreciate you naming that, Alex, that even if we share a few things that we've seen here, they're not going to be all encompassing of young people across the state and in young people in each of the lives of folks that are here today. I'm curious if you all could share for a little bit about what is the hardest part of getting involved in this work or getting started in this work, or what are some of the barriers that you've run into as you've been trying to do this work in your communities and your schools? Marin, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting question because I think so many people want to get involved in politics and government, but don't know where to start. And kind of what Alex was saying, that there's 3 levels of government within our country: local, state, and national. And I think it's important to focus in on what's going on in your community, and you can either like work yourself up or just base what you like want to do your work in as local politics. I think you should figure out what you want to do and base it off of what you're most passionate about, because if you're more passionate about it, then you're gonna do what you can to make whatever ideas you have happen. And so I think really sorting out what you are passionate about and what your ideas are can help people get involved in politics and government. And I think that's hard as a youth because you don't necessarily know exactly what you're super passionate about or what you really believe in because you've had so many influences from your school, from your family, from your friends. You haven't really had that moment to think within yourself and think as your own person what motivates you and what is you're passionate about. So I think taking that time to really reflect within and figure out what you want to do and then exploring the avenues, looking for resources and opportunities to help make your dream come true, I guess. It's kind of a cringy way of saying that, but really just sorting out your priorities and then you can start from there. And that I think is the hardest part is getting those priorities and passions.
I will say I love that we've weaned this conversation towards local politics because I love local politics so much. And especially considering this is a panel for specifically a collaboration between York and Scarborough. I just love local politics. Um, I think I mean the general difficulty is that people don't know they can create change. Um, I know, Maren, you touch on 3 levels of governance. People don't realize we have local and state elections. Like they only hear about like engaging with policy every 4 years, and that's through the presidential election. And if they happen to vote for anything else, is like sort of adjacent to that, rather than knowing what the local and state politics are about. So I think, as with what I said before, the information, the process, it bogs people down. I, for one, did not know that we had a system in Maine that allowed anybody to testify over Zoom, as well as for any bill, and for any reason. And you just have to sign up. We have a very accessible legislature, and the processes in Maine are some of the best in the country as far as engaging people within like government. But even then, like if people don't know what they are allowed to do, and even if those things are possibilities, people can't do those things if they don't first know they exist. So information access is a huge issue anywhere, and making sure that people know about niche things like policy and government. It's really hard to get people interested in those things because a lot of people are tuned off to politics. You say bills and laws and lawyers or like government, and people aren't really interested in that because either, I mean, quite frankly, when I was first taught about it, I was engaged in a classroom setting and I found it quite boring personally. Or it's because people are talking about things like civic duty and responsibility and dry things that don't really sound like things you want to be interested or want to do. I think a lot of the word culture needs to be changed, but I digress. That's a different issue. Um, and as for youth, it's adults. Adults tell youth that we can't create change, we can't do this or that. What we're trying to do is impossible, and what we believe we can change isn't feasible. I think one of the beautiful things about youth in democracy is that we are not yet bogged as much down by society and what we believe is normal or acceptable or what can be done. We want to do things and we will do what we believe must be done to make those issues possible. So I think just like, again, kind of corny, but believe in yourself. You can achieve your dreams, like Maren said. um, and then just like education, there's so many resources we have, and there's not enough funding to go around to distribute everything. So I'd say fund these local businesses and organizations that are trying to get people out to the ballot box, getting people information, and just talking to your friends about it. Show you care, and then your friends will care as well.
To kind of add on, I think Alex and Maren said a lot of the things that I was thinking about. I think the first thing I thought about of this question was adults, because I feel like adults, whenever they see younger people engage in government policy and just like engage in civic engagement and stuff, they always like to patronize, but they don't give any help, and instead they create more barriers. At least at our school, I can see that because in some of our, social advocacy like clubs and everything, or even just events that we want to do, they don't support it, or they don't show up, or they like to use it for their name, but they won't support us financially, emotionally, everything. And it's just frustrating because there's so many kids who have these amazing ideas and who have these thoughts that they could share, and so many kids who could receive education for it, and so many people who are interested in receiving education, but it's just barriers of just random stuff, and it's just frustrating. And I think another thing is also people not knowing they can engage in different ways. So, like, obviously, what Alex was saying, like, it doesn't have to be all bills, policy, and stuff. Like, for me, I'm surrounded by a lot of creative people and creative spaces, especially through poetry, but also music and stuff. And they have a lot of stuff to say, but they're not like, oh, I'm going to go testify for this and stuff. But they civically engage with people. They write stuff. They share their voice and opinions about stuff. That's something I like to do because for some people, that's their voice and that's what they try to use to be more accessible to people. I feel like art is also something that's so accessible to people from various backgrounds. And it's super helpful in conveying just this message of you can engage, you can use your voice for some change. And I think just people knowing that there's so many ways to just engage with other people and just society as a whole. And I think one of the biggest things I was going back to the adults thing is not letting adults stop you or create barriers, because even though they're supposed to be supporting you, if they're not, just know that you hold so much power and you don't have to be forced to think one way or another. You can engage however you want to.
Yeah, I feel like you queued up our next question when you were talking about the ways that folks are expressing themselves and kind of coming around to finding new avenues to make happen what they want and like keep pushing through. And this next question is, how have each of you dealt with conflict or opposition to your work? Because I know several of you have gone to school board meetings or worked to establish clubs and groups. And in all of those spaces, sometimes there's pushback to anything you try to do that's new. And so I'm curious if you could share a bit about the ways that you've dealt with that conflict. I feel like Yashu, you queued us up there of like talking about how like poetry and art gives another avenue. And I'm going to pass it back to you in case you want to expand on that or share other ways that you've dealt with conflict or opposition to the work you've done.
Yeah, so I definitely think one of the biggest, most important things is creating like safe groups where you can be with other people and you can like use your voice. Because when you are with other people as a collective in society, it's sometimes easier to, I guess, use your voice together to create change. And I think in our high school, we had for the past 2 years, we had a workshop, poetry workshop with Maya Williams, who is the 7th Portland Poet Laureate. And I think in that space, like even people who wouldn't normally engage in like civil rights policy and stuff like that, they came into that space and they were willing to talk about these important issues that were necessary, and they were able to find the issues that they're passionate about and they want to create change. And it's just like a poetry workshop. I feel like poetry, art, historically, it had so much influence on so many movements and change. And I think in that space a lot of us were able to learn about each other, learn about what we're passionate about. And I think having those safe groups is really nice to have whenever you're facing opposition, because when you're together as a collective, you're stronger and you can find out what you want to do, and you can find out what you want to do together, but also what you want to do on your own. And I think that's really nice. And I think a lot of those people in that group that we had, they use their writing as their voice to spread awareness about what they're passionate about.
To kind of build off of Yashu's idea of having that kind of power in numbers, like having those people that you can express yourself with, to talk specifically about my like journey co-founding a model UN organization at York High School. me and then my friend, we co-founded it, and we saw a lot of opposition within our school, but that was mainly because people didn't know what it was. Like staff members and administration didn't really understand what Model United Nations was. And so through educating them and then educating our peers about what Model UN's got them excited about it. And then we had this group of students who were all passionate about foreign politics, wanted to get involved, wanted to, even if they didn't really know much about foreign politics, they were intrigued by the idea and wanted to learn. And so just having this collective body of people who were passionate about the same thing and were willing to fight for this within our school and get it approved really helped us found this organization, which I think it's really important because it's like an avenue for people to like explore a future career idea or really just have like a sense of community and feel like you're a part of a team. And so like that idea of having that number, like the numbers in the safe space, I think really helps with people, first of all, wanting to get involved with different, like whether it's an organization that's geared towards politics or just any organization and all, having that like numbers and having those people that you feel safe around, and then using those people to help further push your ideas and help us like get Model UN approved. And our school board we had to go to meetings and work to get this approved. And they loved the idea that people within their community were looking beyond their community and looking beyond the own United States government, and were looking to help ways that they can help improve world politics. And they really appreciated that students were thinking about the broader scheme of the world, and that they have this like space to kind of talk about their ideas and work towards a common goal. And I think that's just like how I've dealt with opposition is by having more people to help spread your ideas and have people be able to like invest in our own ideas and have those be respected because we have more people. It's sad that a lot of times you don't get the enough attention by yourself, but will get more attention with more people. And so just by having more people with you, you can get your ideas heard. And I think that's just how I've dealt with opposition, is by getting others who feel like they've been opposed to.
I think just bringing it back to the levels of governance and what Yoshi was talking about, finding another way. If you try to get something in school education, if you're doing a presentation about encouraging people to act a certain way, if that doesn't work, then you move to the school board. If that doesn't work, you bring it to higher administration. You bring it to a news network. You bring it to your legislature. You bring it to the state. You bring it to your town hall. There's so many different ways of going about conflict. I think stopping at the first barrier is a lot of people's first response because they don't know a lot of the stuff. And if I wasn't surrounded by such great community that was willing and able to help me find other ways to get done what I wanted to do, I don't think I would still be in this space if I thought there was only one way to get something done. I think specifically with my school's leadership team, we often find a lot of difficulties within them, as yes, you talked about our civil rights club. Our civil rights club faces a lot of difficulty when it comes to interacting with our leadership team and trying to get policy across and protecting students and their mental well-being. We've been looking at other options such as news networks and also supporting state legislature bills as ways of finding new ways to solve the conflicts that we face in a district level. So I think just finding other ways really is just it.
I think that that level of persistence when it comes to being involved in democracy is something that you're all showing very strongly here, that you all understand that like we try and we try again and we try again and we tweak it a little and then we try again here. So I really resonate with that. And that has been my experience also working with state level change too. And I'm curious, I know we have an audience today of mostly adults, but I'm curious what advice you all have for the adults here tonight who are want to engage with young people around them and specifically engage them in politics. So what's a piece of advice or a couple pieces of advice that you would give to some of the adults in the room? Alex, I don't think I've started with you in a little while, so I'll start with you.
I mean, I said this a while back ago, but just ask them what they care about. I know it seems like very simple and obvious, but you'd be surprised what a conversation can get you if you are genuinely interested in what they have to say. You're willing to listen, you're willing to take criticisms, you're willing to hear things that you might be uncomfortable with and that you might not want to hear as an adult. Be ready for that, be ready to change, and be ready to help them regardless. I think the main thing that adults have in far as actual experience of policymaking and change making that isn't in a patronizing sense, you already know how the processes work. Tell them how the things work and all the different things and all the different ways they can get done what they want to do. And let them do the change making on their own. Be there to support them, let them make the decisions. Don't overtake. And always, 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 always be listening.
Yeshu or Marin, are one of you inspired to follow that up?
So I think just adding on to Alex, using the privilege and just helping the youth, just listening to them is something that's really important because I guess like a lot of youth, I don't know, people think that they're being dramatic or they're just like in some phase of like, oh, you're just like mad about everything. Like, I don't know. I feel that, especially in our school, like a lot of some teachers I had experiences with, it's like, oh, you guys are just like kids. Like, you don't know anything. You're just, especially when we're talking about like political issues and stuff. And it's like just listening to their perspectives, getting rid of these power dynamics and like just trying to help them reduce these barriers that are placed, hearing their voice. And I think just listen, listen, listen. Honestly, like what Alex said, it's just really important to have like a mutual listening because I feel like there's a lot of things that youth can also learn from adults as well, but also just engaging like in a way where it's like a mutual benefit thing rather than just acting like they know more, I guess. Just listening to each other's experiences, no matter how different they are, because the only way to create change is to learn about the various experiences that people have and the intersectionalities of it and just using that information to reduce barriers for change.
When I think of this question, I think of 3 words, and that is connect, trust, and support. And I think that's really important. That's what you need to think about as an adult when you're trying to help your youth in democracy and in politics is you need to connect with them. Like Alex and Yashu said, ask them about what they think of things, like have those conversations. And even if you don't necessarily know or like have like a youth that you can directly reach out to, look what's going on in your local school department, see what kids are doing with their time and with their efforts, and look within your community, see what youth are trying to do. And that's the way you can connect, is by seeing what kids are passionate about. And like Yashu said, trust in youth and trust that we know what we're talking about. We wouldn't push for our ideas and talk with people about them if we didn't know what we were talking about. And I think that's important, that adults need to trust that we are educated and we know what's going on. Youth are some of the most observant people because we kind of see the world going on around us and aren't directly impacted as much as adults might be, because we have that protection of being technically a minor. But we observe and we know what's going on in the world, and we have our ideas about that. And then the last word that I have is support. And once you connect with your youth, and once you understand what they are talking about and believe in their ideas, you need to support them, whether that's donating to their organizations or clubs, or providing a resource and opportunities for them to help spread their ideas. You need to help support the youth in order for them to become more powerful and more active in politics.
All right, one last thing before we hand it over to our next question. I want to really reiterate that. And Maren just reminded me of something else I thought is really important, is that you need to keep the door open. Of course, give them the resources. And once you do that, let the youth do it on their own. But always be ready to answer questions, be available, be emotionally available for all of the turmoil that comes with doing political work. And be ready to have those conversations and support as they see fit. And I mean, you can even like a check-in every once in a while is great. Not a, I want you to do this. You need to do this by then. But like, how are you doing? How is this going? Showing continued interest rather than just the initial conversation, and supporting as you're going, to show that you're still available to answer any further questions that they inevitably will have with doing this type of work.
Thank you all for sharing that advice. I sometimes describe my job, because I host a lot of youth-led teams, as the like admin support for a bunch of young people. I'm constantly asking exactly what Alex said there, like, what do you need to make this happen? What do you need here? So I feel like sometimes I'm building the like infrastructure or the scaffolding behind the project, so that the young people can take the lead action and make things happen. But to make those things happen, there's all sorts of admin details on the back end that I feel like most youth-led projects can really use that support. And so asking them where to help and leaning in there and really letting them drive. Our last question here. So we have one more question for our like preset question for our panelists before we move to audience questions. So audience, this is your cue to drop some questions in the chat, or to be ready to come off mute and ask our team. But our last piece we wanted to wrap up on here is what do each of you envision for the future of youth in politics? What is your vision for the future?
I guess I'll start, because I haven't heard anybody, or I haven't heard you hand it off to anybody. I think lowering the voting age to 16 in Maine, that's an up and coming thing we're hoping to do here. And I want to be able to see more of my peers in these election places. Like a study by the league has shown that when people are starting to vote in their local spaces, in their elections, with a parent guardian in their local communities, where they're likely to care about the issues that are going on, or even just for the school board, because they're still affected by that when they're in school. If you engage students in a place where they're comfortable first, then they will be more engaged. So enacting that and making sure that we're giving the youth the support they need in these types of elections, and creating that space earlier rather than later. Because when people are 18, a lot of people are moving into the workforce, or they're moving into like military or college. And a lot of times those places are new, they're uncomfortable, and even in a new state where you have to learn all these new registration practices. On top of all the new changes that come with whatever new life decisions you're going to have to make out of high school. And when youth are in these spaces, it's less comfortable for them to vote. So we're starting where they're in a space where they're more safe to start voting. They're more comfortable and they're more able to engage. I believe that has the greatest potential to engage youth further into the space, and make it so more youth feel comfortable in addressing the issues they care about, starting from the bottom up.
Alex, I agree with the idea of lowering the voting age and just getting youth comfortable in youth exercising their power in politics. And for me, what I envision in the future is youth being consulted more by politicians, and having that be sort of a norm. Like, that's normal for whether it's a local, state, or national politician, to just reach out to youth within their community, or have some sort of like body of like students and of young people who can kind of represent their ideas. Like, we have in our democracy, we have representatives for our districts and for our state, but we don't necessarily have representatives within demographics, because obviously there's age limits for people running for official government positions. So by having some sort of opportunity for youth to be directly involved in politics and having them be sort of a consult for politicians to go through so they can make sure they explore all viewpoints before they vote on a bill or push some sort of legislation, like making sure that they understand what the people want and can do their job, which is to represent their people, do that best. And part of that starts with making sure they understand what their youth want.
To kind of add on to what Marin was saying, I think it's so important for politicians to reach out to younger people and listen to them. And I think recently I was talking about how in Scarborough we had Representative Pingree come to our school, and just like we just had like a circle thing, and we were just talking about issues and stuff we were passionate about, and that really helped us like feel stronger as well, because we felt like we were being heard after our town, the school, and everything, they were not listening to us. And having someone there listen to us, it just felt really nice to have that. And I think politicians doing that more, I think that's so important. And I think another thing is not being like scared to embrace opportunities and stuff, or backing away from opportunities. Like, don't be afraid to embrace these opportunities, no matter how big or small they may seem. They still make change. And like, if you can use those various experiences you have, and it can be used as a power for you, because we want more diversity of ideas and stuff, and we need people to engage in different ways in different spaces so that it can be a widespread thing rather than just one space. And I think just don't be scared to embrace these new opportunities, and always be willing to find opportunities as well to make your voice heard.
Thank you all. I love those visions for our future and where we're headed. Well, audience, it is your turn now. You're welcome to come off mute or just drop a question in the chat, either way. And we're originally scheduled to go till 7:30, so this time is pretty flexible. We can welcome as many questions as you all have, or yeah. And also speakers, if there is anything else that you're like, oh, we didn't cover this, feel free to share that.
I have a question. So, we heard a lot kind of about your overall feeling about being engaged in politics. Are there specific issues that really drive you? Like, I know some kids are really focused on women's rights or LGBTQ rights, or um, the um, the environment or something like that, and or our involvement with various wars. Is there an issue that drives you?
I think right now there are a couple. Um, I'd say LGBTQ plus rights. There was this bill that if reelected, Senator Brenner is going to try to put forth about having a minimum wage for farm workers. Because in Maine they aren't required to have a minimum wage, which is ridiculous. So I support that specifically. I'm also looking at Wabanaki rights. As for federal issues, there's the Israel-Palestine conflict. Less so engaging on that personally, because I know where I can affect change making the most, so I'm sticking mostly to local and state politics, but that is something I believe in very much so. As well as voter enfranchisement is really important to me. I've been doing a lot of gun safety legislation work in the last year or so, and I mean youth education and engagement. Actually, I'm pretty sure there's only like 5 cents per student spent for social studies. So I'm hoping that Maine can start putting up that number and we can start spend more funding on social studies to get more youth engaged in democracy.
For me personally, I think the issues that motivate me the most, number one has to be women's rights, because I just find in our society, women now should not be entering adulthood with less rights that their mothers had. And I think obviously with the overturning of Roe v. Wade, there's a lot more women who are getting out there to fight for their rights. And I see that within our community and on the national level. And there's different avenues to make change with that at all of the government levels. And so that's the issue I think that motivates me the most. Alongside that, just foreign politics and U.S. involvement in wars and U.S. just trade relations and how our country presents ourselves as a world dominating power, and how we interact with other countries is another issue that I'm passionate about. And education, because obviously we're all going through the America's public school education system right now, and we see the flaws in it. And obviously our schools are better than some. There's some schools in our country that are really just not suitable learning environments for students, and finding ways to make it so we can have the most educated society that we can. So then we have people making educated decisions within their lives. Because to me, the greatest issue to solve is ignorance. And you want people to know what they're talking about and know what they want. And that all starts with education. And so education is a very important issue to me as well, in the environment and anything else in our society that could probably be fixed.
Yeah, I think there's a lot. I think the one that I'm very passionate about is probably immigration rights, because I feel like there's a system that's just so broken for decades and stuff. And it's like, it's separating kids, it's causing so many barriers. And I know because I have friends who are experiencing stuff like that. I'm experiencing stuff like that. And like, you see it, and it's just like so broken and annoying to deal with for all these people. And there's so many, I feel like it's just kind of an ignored topic too sometimes. Like people pretend to care about it and stuff, but they don't really go into it. And it's frustrating when you're trying to explain that to someone about just how the system is. And then, but it's always really nice when people like ask questions and stuff about it. Um, I think another thing, just like civil rights, like in schools and workplaces, like discrimination policies and just stuff like that. Like, especially in our school, there's a lot of stuff that just teachers don't handle well because they don't think it, like, we have a lot of microaggressions and stuff like that, but it can't be really like reportable and stuff. You can't really get in trouble for it. And there's just a lot of these broken policies where people don't get accountable, the people who are causing harm. And I think just US involvement in all these wars and stuff, and a lot of like imperialist mindset, I think just like the ignorance which comes along with it, um, women's rights, it's crazy. Like, yeah, I think Marion mentioned like what I wanted to say. Like, it's just crazy that we're living like that now. And just, I think so many things. I can't really put it all, but I think that's some of the big ones which I really talk about a lot, and I'm really researching and learning more about. And I try to educate other people about it as well. And I think in society, just anything that causes harm to one group or another, that's important and it's worth fighting for.
Thank you all. Really appreciate hearing the specifics there. Are there any other questions from our audience members? Anything else that you're curious about?
Hi. I am a former high school special ed teacher. I taught for 32 years at a high school in Massachusetts. So I am loving tonight. I feel like I'm back in school and remembering how vital and vibrant kids can be. But that actually leads me to my question. And that is, what about the other students. I'm guessing, and I hope I'm wrong, but I'm guessing that you are a small percentage of the engaged students at your school. So I guess I'm wondering, do you feel supported by your peers? And how engaged are the majority of students in politics, using it broadly? Because I really like that you're talking about local issues, and it doesn't have to be a bill. It can be just something that pertains to what's happening in your school.
I think, yes, we are a small percentage, but acknowledging that, there's this thing I always like to say, because a lot of people in these types of spaces acknowledge that I'm a youth and always say great things about that. I am not exceptional for a youth or for myself. I am exceptional for the opportunities that have been given to me. And I believe that if all youth were given the same opportunities as I was, if they had the support necessary and the teachers believing in them to do what they want to do, they would be more engaged. Like I said, information is the greatest barrier to accessing government. And because youth are never told that it is a possible thing for them to engage in government, they tune out, because why would you be engaged in something that you have no effect on? I think breaking down those narratives, finding groups like me and Yeshu's Civil Rights Club, I would say that even everybody in that club is significantly more engaged than everybody at our school. But that is not because we are inherently exceptional or there is a type of person that wants to join that club. It is because we are going into that space wanting to create change, and we are not told, no, you will not create that change, and this is why. We are told, why do you feel that? How can we do this? And we work through it together because we have support and understanding, and specifically peer mentors that have been doing the same work as we have over the past few years. And as people grow up to be seniors and they support their underclassmen, that cycle perpetuates, of course, with support of a teacher. But it is because we originally started that cycle of youth learning and youth being supported, then people see those selves in ourselves, in seniors. And like freshmen see that seniors are creating change and they ask them for help. And they see that and say, wow, they're youth too. I can do that. And they believe in themselves. I think the greatest killer of youth engagement is self-doubt. People don't believe that they can create change because the system tells them they cannot. Even if it is just one voice telling them that, yes, you can, that can sometimes be enough to start a chain reaction and let like students like ourselves be like wonderfully engaged.
Thanks for that question, Naomi. Marin or Yashu, do you have anything to add?
I think just kind of adding on to Alex, like supporting these younger kids who are like interested in stuff. I think that's so important because even like I know Alex, like there's so many younger kids who like come up to us or like look up to us and they are really interested, but they haven't had the same resources or opportunities to feel like they should be in that space, or they didn't have that access, and providing that access for them is really important. And I think we are like a small percentage of those people. I think especially in my town, there's like this bubble. I feel like people, there needs to be first the decolonization of the mind before anything. And I think it's really hard if you're, because if you have a certain experience, it's really hard to do that. But you need that. It's like really essential if you want to engage in stuff, because you need to be willing to listen to various experiences instead of having this one prejudice about certain things. And I think that's really important. And yeah, supporting younger peers, other peers. I've had so many of my own friends who've never really talked about politics and stuff talk to me about it, and they're listening about it and they're learning more. And I think even that is just creating change. It doesn't have to be some big thing. just supporting others and just creating spaces where you can have people who can just listen to you, or you can listen to them about what they're thinking about, and you can collaborate together and create change.
I agree with both of their ideas about making sure you reach out to your peers. And I think that's more than just your high school peers. I see a commonality among that small percentage of students who are active in politics. And one of those things is confidence. It's not necessarily that you're a super extroverted person and are confident in that way, but it's you're confident in yourself. Like you can see within the three of us here, we are here speaking to all of you. We might not know all of you, but we are confident in our ideas and in our opinions. And so teaching that level of confidence young, I work with a lot of organizations where you kind of are that like mentor and that role model for younger students, like in elementary school, and you're just trying to teach them that they have their own power and that they have the power to make their own decisions and that they can see how their decisions influence others. And so, unrelated to politics, those are the foundations of what you need to be active in politics. You need to understand your power and what influence your power has on others. And so by exploring that aspect of yourself, you can be more comfortable for when you are older and are high school age like us to be active in politics. So I think I agree with Alex and Ashu's ideas, but I think it starts earlier than just being a high school peer, and it should be starting when we're young in elementary school, middle school, because that's when our mind is forming to come up with our ideas. And if you can kind of combat those like prejudice ideas about, oh, I don't want to be that person that's involved in politics and I don't have that ability, like combating those ideas before they can even be formed, I think can make our small percentage much larger and get more youth involved.
Thank you, guys. I was listening to you and remembering one of the things I did when I was teaching was to be an advisor to a group called the Young Women's Leadership Club. And what was fascinating about that, and I think it's kind of relevant because they weren't all ready to be involved in politics, but they understood what it meant to be a leader. And sometimes that was simply being prepared for a dance recital or whatever it was they were involved in. And when I was leaving the high school, we had like some closing meetings, and almost to a person, the students would say how when they arrived as freshmen into this group, scared, nervous, unsure of themselves, they looked to the older students and watched what they were doing. And by the time they were seniors or juniors, they were running forums, they were planning events, they were doing things. Maybe they weren't super, super political, but they were certainly socially relevant. It was a time when AIDS education was really kind of getting going, and a lot of the forums were around that, around women in the military, about just what it was like to take charge of something. Anyway, so thank you, and I love the idea of peer mentorship, high school and earlier.
Yeah, and I think that's like a reminder to all of us, right? I think mentorships are something that we carry throughout our entire lives, and we're never too old to be a mentee, to be mentored by somebody, and we're never too young either, right? I feel like that's always like our constant drive to work within our communities is continuing to pull in those mentorships and share your knowledge and hear the teachings that other people have for you. We have a question in the chat about a local issue that's been coming up more and more. We've been seeing some news articles about this, and some of your school boards may be proposing policies around this year. And it's, what's your opinion on eliminating cell phones in schools? They've seen that many school boards have had conversations circling around this. And is there a conversation at your school, or what is your opinion on this topic?
I can kind of get us started. I don't know what my fellow panelists' views are on this subject, but for me, it's that cell phones should not be banned because it's an aspect of our independence, and not to be like the teenager who, oh, my light just turned off, not to be the teenager who always is like, oh, I want to be on my phone. Oh, it's like a part of me. Because I think there is that stereotype about teenagers is that we're dependent on our phones. And I think that's not the case. But with that said, I don't think our phones should be taken away. It's, to me, it's like an idea that like there is the expectation in your job that you shouldn't be on your cell phone. But would you support a, let's say, a nationwide ban on cell phones in workplaces? No, most adults would not support that. The expectation is we're not on our phones during school. So then why should that be treated differently for youth than adults? And that's just my opinion. I have other ideas and other opinions about this subject, but the main idea is that I don't think we should be treated different than adults just because we're in school, and cell phones are like an aspect of our independence and we should keep them because they're a form of communication. And if something was to happen, I know in our society it's a sad reality that school shootings can happen. And if I was in a situation like that, I would want to be able to contact people. And if I didn't have my cell phone, I wouldn't have that resource. And so just kind of those hypotheticals and overall that we shouldn't be treated differently is why I support cell phones should remain in schools.
Alex or Yashu, do you have a feeling, a immediate feeling on this issue?
I think I remember talking about this, like my computer science teacher. She was talking about it with another teacher about the stuff because some of my friends or people from other schools, I know they already have like a pouch thing they have to put it in stuff. My opinion is I don't think they should be banned because I think Marion mentioned a lot of the reasons. I think it's just like not fair that we're being like treated different than adults because we're essentially doing the same like thing. Like people are working at like they're working at like 16, 15. Like it's just like it just does not feel right that we have people who are actually working at this age who are doing similar things to what adults have to do and they can't have their phone. And I think phones, like even if you take them away, if you think like this stereotype of teenagers just like using them for, I don't know, just being distracted, I think they should view it as being like a resource of security too, because sadly, like school shootings and stuff and emergencies, those are really important. And you need communication, especially in this modern age. Like, I feel like whenever something is getting, like computers, for example, like you need them for a lot of things nowadays. Maybe back then it was like different, and it's like it's something that is not gonna stop. Like there's gonna be people who are gonna use phones in the future and stuff. It's not something that's gonna end or anything. I feel the same way with AI too. I think it's just gonna continue. I have my other opinions about that, but it's just like it's just you just can't prevent it at this point. Like people need their phones because there's so many stuff that are dependent on it, even for school. And I just feel it's not a reasonable argument on the basis of like, oh, kids are their mental health is worse and they're getting less sleep and stuff. I feel like there's so many reasons, like getting a lot of homework and a lot of stuff like that as well. Other factors, I think that they should also be factored in. And even if you do take away phones, like people are going to resort to other ways, which might be more dangerous or harmful to them. And it's just, I guess it's just not fair to be treated differently, I think. Um, yeah. If kids are old enough to work, I think they're old enough to have their phones.
I think my first immediate response is that I haven't done research on this, so I don't really feel comfortable talking about this. Of course, I have my own personal biases and prejudices about the topic based off of my own age demographic and who my peers are. Granted, we have this group called Scarborough Moms that is actively lobbying the school board to try to ban cell phones. One of my concerns is that I believe I heard in a middle school, I don't know if it was ours or somewhere else, that they just had people like dump their phones in a bucket at the start of the school. And that seems extremely unsanitary to me. Because phones have more germs than uh even our hands. So that seems like a biohazard waiting to happen. And I suppose if people were to enact it, that's a like policy specific part, like in how it would be implemented, that I have objections to. As for the banning of cell phones itself, I don't know. I haven't done my research and I don't feel comfortable giving anybody an opinion when I haven't had the opportunity to be well researched myself. I guess just what Marin and Yeshu said with like school shootings being a possibility. I don't have strong indications either way for myself.
I really appreciate you all giving your opinions and just kind of leaning into the different arguments that exist around this topic, because much like all of the arguments around AI, I don't think this conversation is going away anytime soon, just like you said, Yashu. I think we have time this evening for one more question. If there's any more burning questions in the audience, it's been really lovely to spend some time with you all this evening. Any final questions from our audience? Okay, well, I'm gonna drop my email into the chat. So if any of you ever want to get in contact with me about what our teams of young people are up to and the ways that you can support and get involved, and in the ways that we can continue to connect students with adult mentors in the community who want to uplift their work, I'm always happy to facilitate some of that. And I know there'll be a lot more of these experiences for schools and community members who are attending the Camden Conference and later in this year in February. And thank you all for attending tonight. It's been really fun to plan this event and get to connect with more folks across the state who are passionate about this work. And I don't know if Dwight or Carrie or Elise, you have any other closing thoughts that you'd like to share?
Just wanted to thank you again, Allyson. This was terrific, and thank you to our teams. It was a wonderful program. We'll have the recording available on our YouTube channel later this week. So if there are folks who missed it, you want to share the link, please distribute so more people can benefit from the conversation tonight.
I wanted to mention also that there are a lot of Camden Conference events that are available on Zoom, so you don't have to go to Camden in February to be part of the Camden Conference. So if you check their events page, they have lots of things listed, and anyone is invited to any of them. Thank you so much. This was a wonderful program. I really appreciate your being here.
Thank you all.
Thank you.